In 2011, Google launched Google+, its social network to compete with Facebook. Google had one of the most talented engineering organizations on earth. It had nearly unlimited capital. It had extraordinary brand recognition and a user base of hundreds of millions of people through its search and Gmail products. Google+ failed. Not because Google executed it badly, because the structural dynamics of the social network market, network effects creating insurmountable incumbent advantages, switching costs that locked users into Facebook, a buyer pool that had no reason to switch, made it essentially impossible for any new entrant to succeed, regardless of their resources. This is the insight at the heart of Porter's 5 forces. Not all industries are created equal. Some industries are structurally attractive. They have dynamics that allow well-run companies to earn strong returns over time. Others are structurally hostile. No matter how well you execute, the forces arrayed against your profitability will erode it. Understanding which kind of industry you are in and why is one of the most valuable pieces of strategic intelligence available to any business leader, investor, or analyst. And Porter's 5 forces is the most rigorous framework available for generating that understanding. Welcome to The Catalyst. This is episode 20. Today we cover Porter's 5 forces, the framework from Harvard's Michael Porter that maps the structural dynamics of any industry. What the 5 forces are, what makes each one stronger or weaker, how they interact, and how businesses use them to make better decisions about where to compete and how to position themselves. Michael Porter was a 26-year-old associate professor at Harvard Business School when he published his first Harvard Business Review article in 1979. How Competitive Forces Shape Strategy. It became one of the most influential articles in the history of business strategy, and the framework it introduced has shaped strategic thinking for over 40 years. Porter's motivation was a dissatisfaction with the existing approach to competitive analysis. The tools available at the time, primarily SWOT analysis, lacked analytical rigor. They produced lists rather than insights, and they could not explain why fundamentally similar companies performing similarly well produced radically different returns depending on which industry they operated in. Porter grounded his framework in industrial organization economics, the academic discipline that studies how industry structure determines competitive behavior and profitability. His insight was that the structure of an industry could be analyzed systematically through 5 forces, and that understanding those forces was the foundation of any credible competitive strategy. The 5 forces framework maps the competitive dynamics of any industry through 5 structural forces. Each force represents a source of competitive pressure on the industry's profitability. The stronger the collective force, the lower the industry's structural attractiveness. Force 1. Rivalry among existing competitors. This is the most visible force. The direct competitive battles between companies already in the industry. Rivalry is intense when competitors are numerous and roughly equal in size, when growth is slow, when products are undifferentiated, and when exit barriers are high. The airline industry in most markets is a textbook example of intense rivalry. Multiple airlines competing on the same routes with essentially identical products on price. The structural consequence is persistently thin margins across the industry, regardless of how well individual airlines are managed. Force 2. Threat of new entrants. New entrants bring new capacity and the desire to gain market share, which puts downward pressure on prices and increases costs for existing players. The strength of this force depends on entry barriers, the factors that make it difficult for a new competitor to enter. High capital requirements, strong brand loyalty among existing customers, network effects, Economies of scale and regulatory barriers are all forms of entry protection. The pharmaceutical industry has high barriers: patents, regulatory approval processes, clinical trial requirements. The restaurant industry has very low barriers. The structural consequences for profitability are dramatically different. Force. 3. Bargaining power of suppliers. Suppliers extract value from an industry by raising prices, reducing quality, or limiting supply. Supplier power is high when there are few suppliers relative to buyers, when the inputs supplied are unique or difficult to substitute, or when suppliers pose a credible threat of forward integration into the industry. Intel and Microsoft had extraordinary supplier power over the personal computer industry through the 1990s and 2000s. The PC manufacturers competed fiercely among themselves, while Intel and Microsoft captured the majority of the industry's economic value. Force. 4. Bargaining power of buyers. Buyers extract value by forcing prices down, demanding higher quality, or playing competitors against each other. Buyer power is high when buyers are large and concentrated relative to the suppliers, when products are standardized and easily substituted, and when buyers can credibly threaten to produce the product themselves. Walmart's supplier relationships are the textbook example of buyer power. Walmart's scale gives it the leverage to dictate terms to suppliers in ways that compress supplier margins, while Walmart retains the value. Force 5. Threat of substitutes. Substitutes are products or services from outside the industry that perform the same function. They are different from competitor products. A competitor makes the same thing you make in a different way. A substitute serves the same underlying need through an entirely different mechanism. The threat of substitutes limits an industry's profitability by capping the price that customers will pay. Streaming services are not just competitors to traditional television, they are substitutes. The taxi industry did not lose ground primarily to other taxi companies. It lost ground to a substitute, ride-hailing apps, that served the same underlying need through a fundamentally different delivery mechanism. The 5 Forces framework has 3 distinct strategic applications. The first is industry selection. For investors and companies considering entering new markets, 5 Forces analysis reveals the structural profitability potential of different industries. Warren Buffett's investment philosophy, which he describes as looking for businesses with wide moats, is essentially a 5 Forces analysis. Moats are structural entry barriers, switching costs, network effects, and brand advantages that protect a business's pricing power against all 5 forces. Berkshire Hathaway's portfolio reflects a consistent preference for businesses in industries where the forces are structurally weak. The second is positioning within an industry. Even in structurally difficult industries, some positions are more defensible than others. Understanding which forces are most intense and why tells you where within the industry to position for the best returns. Budget airlines have found positions within the structurally difficult airline industry that generate consistent profitability. By serving routes and customer segments where buyer power is lower, rivalry is less intense, and substitutes are less accessible. The third is shaping the forces. Porter argued that the most sophisticated use of 5 Forces analysis is not to accept the forces as given, but to actively work to reshape them. A company that builds switching costs for its customers is working to reduce buyer power. A company that builds strong supplier relationships reduces supplier power. A company that builds a network effect creates a structural barrier that deters new entrants. Apple's ecosystem, the integration between iPhone, iPad, Mac, AirPods, Apple Watch, and iCloud, is a deliberate program of switching cost construction that has progressively reduced buyer bargaining power over decades. 5 things to carry from this episode. 1. Industry structure determines profitability more than company execution. A well-run company in a structurally attractive industry will typically outperform a brilliantly run company in a structurally hostile one. Before optimizing how you compete, understand where you are competing. 2. The 5 forces work together. No single force in isolation tells the full story. The most dangerous strategic errors come from accurately identifying one force while being blind to the cumulative impact of the others. 3. Forces are not static. Industry structure changes over time. New technologies, regulatory shifts, demographic changes, and competitive innovations can weaken or strengthen individual forces. The 5 forces analysis that was accurate in 2010 may not be accurate today. Reassess regularly. 4. Understanding buyer and supplier power is underutilized by most practitioners. The rivalry force is easy to see. The power dynamics with buyers and suppliers are less visible, but often more structurally determining. Where is the value in your industry actually going, and why? 5. Your action. Select one industry you are involved in, as a professional, an investor, or a strategist. Map each of the 5 forces and rate it high, medium, or low. The overall picture will tell you whether the industry is structurally attractive and where within it the most defensible positions lie. Coming up on episode 21 of The Catalyst, we step inside the customer's experience. The Customer Journey Map. The framework for visualizing every interaction a customer has with your brand, from the moment they first become aware of you to the moment they become an advocate for you. Why the companies that map this journey outperform the ones that don't, and how to build a map that actually drives decisions. Stay tuned.